Welcome into the Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and a couple of weeks ago, the Mattawa Canoe Race was held here in the North Bay, Mattawa area, and our guests today are actually a pair who won their group at the Mattawa Canoe Race. But we're not talking the Mattawa Canoe Race. No, today we are talking about something that is much bigger than the 64-kilometer race here locally. We're talking about the Yukon 1000, which is a 1,000-mile trek through the Yukon into Alaska over 10 days. You have 10 days to complete it. There's no help around. It's basically you versus nature. So we're talking about the pre-race, the prep that has to go into it, of course, getting used to, as we said, the safety, which is big. Nobody's there to give you immediate medical attention. No one's around. So that's a big concern as well. We also talk about probably the hardest part of the entire thing, which is getting accepted into the race itself. There is a whole interview process and bidding process that you have to do to even be allowed to pay money to enter into the race. And so that's a whole process that we're going to be talking about as well. All of that on the way. But first, a word from today's title sponsor, Source for Sports North Bay. Spring is here, and that means one thing. Baseball is back. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of every pitch, every catch, and every moment that brings our community together on the diamond. Whether it's outfitting little leaguers for their very first game, helping local teams suit up for the season, or simply sharing the love of the sport, we're here for it. We're more than just a sports store. We're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to support the leagues, schools, and families who make North Bay's baseball scene so special. Wherever your sports journey takes you, make sure you visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street so we can help you along your way. We are here today with Sean Lougheed and Lauren Anderson, and they have a pretty cool story because very recently you guys are going to be doing probably the most insane thing I've ever heard of. And we've had people that have cycled the Antarctica and done a lot of crazy things, but you guys are going to go on a very long canoe trip recently. So first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Ben, look, at the last time you were in a canoe, it didn't go so well for you in that North Bay to Mattawa canoe race. And again,
we got at a trout lake, okay?
You got at a trout lake. But, Sean and Lauren are going to go in the Yukon 1000. It's the longest marathon race in the world. And in fact, I'm just going to read, it's an epic high-risk adventure, pure isolation, total exhaustion, self-survival. They go 18 hours a day, and they sleep where they end up. And they've kind of got to do it in 10 days. And again, it's 1,000 miles. It's actually 946 miles because I looked it up, and it's going to be July 10th coming up, and they're here. And again, they're going to come back into the studio to the Backroads Bill Podcast, and we'll find out how they fared. Could you imagine? But the first question is, maybe we'll start off with Lauren. Like, how did you get into this, and why would you do such a thing? And it'll be the same question for you over there.
So for me, I got into this particular race because of Sean. I've only, prior to signing up for this race, I'd only done the one race before, which was the Yukon River Quest, which I did with my sister back in 2011, which again, kind of Sean planted the seed for that too, talking about it. But this time, Sean and his son River last year were doing the Yukon River Quest, and I was meant to run support for them. So we had a lot of logistics talks kind of leading up to the race, and every single time we talked, Sean was like, oh, there's this other race called the Yukon 1000 that I'm really interested in doing, but I don't have anyone to do it with. So, and then finally after the 7th or 8th time that he mentioned it, I was like, okay, if you can't find anyone else, I will do it.
You're going to do it. You are two peas. You are two peas in a pod, and listeners and viewers should understand that you have to apply to get into this race. The statistics show that somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 apply annually. They take, I think, between 30 and 40. I know that number varies a bit, but it's a select group based on all kinds of background. It's like the Amazing Race, I think, and the Yukon 1000 is an amazing race. Sean, how did you get into this marathon canoe racing? Because this is what we're talking about today, people that are involved in world-class events that are extreme.
Yeah, probably the origin story goes all the way back to 2007 when my son was born, and I knew about the Yukon River Quest, which is a long-standing race out of Whitehorse that runs every year to Dawson, about half the distance of the 1,000. And I thought when my son was born, avid in the outdoors, camping, all our families are, and I thought that would be a neat thing to do when he's a little bit older. And that was something that he and I accomplished last year, participating in that race, and had started talking about that in our families, back at that time. And Lauren and Danica had beat us to it. They had completed the River Quest in 2011. And life happens, and our kids are growing, and I was so happy to partake in that experience. That was like a really significant event last year. And then when you're up there and you're involved in that racing community, and of course we have a vibrant racing community here locally, which I'm sure we'll talk about with the Mattawa race, you hear about the 1,000. And it's a different race. All these races have different characteristics, and Bill, you did a great job kind of introducing the 1,000. It's unsupported, which means like you leave Whitehorse with all your gear and your supplies. It's an expedition compressed into a race format. It's typified by that 18-hour a day when they force a 6-hour pull-off, and you're trying to complete the miles, the kilometers, as quickly as possible and before the 10-day cutoff. So thinking about, where to go next after the River Quest, and as you mentioned, it's there's an application process, and Lauren and I were able to put in a competitive bid, and we got an interview with the race director last fall, and it went well, and we got off the phone and said, how did that go? I think we both thought it went well, but surely, just the thousands of teams that apply, like surely maybe we'll get shortlisted. And then to get an email at the end of September was a bit surreal. Congratulations, see you on the start line. And that really set in motion, however many months ago that was, a pretty involved kind of training plan to shore up skill gaps, identify our complementary strengths, and identify the areas that we need to work on to get ourselves prepared to participate in this thing, which is about to unfold in a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, and just for the listeners and viewers, as this podcast will be released, the Yukon Quest, which is a shorter race, it's been shortened even more so because of the conditions in the far north. But let's get back to that training, because I'm always amazed that, hey, you want to go in the race, but you got to apply. And as I used the analogy already of the Amazing Race, you've got to have an interview. And I'm thinking, wow, you just can't even get into the race. You got to go through this. So congratulations on getting through, because that's an honor in itself. Tell us about some of the training regime stuff that you do, including the North Bay to Mattawa routes, because again, on the Backroads Bill podcast, we got to know that these people you just don't show up. It's not one of those things like going to the dance. You've got to, it's maybe like ballroom dancing, Ben, that you've got to take lessons before you go. But anyway, the training regime.
Yeah, so number one, we spend as much time in a boat together as possible. We started in the fall, shortly after we heard about the race, up until the ice happened. And then we were back on the river on March 20th, had to crack through the ice in some spots, just spending time getting into a rhythm in the boat together. And then separately, we're spending a lot of time on the erg, weight training, just sprint training, trying to build the VO2 max with intervals, that kind of thing. And yeah.
Well, and viewers and listeners, again, should know they look fit, Ben, as well, mentally and physically, because you're tied together by family extension ties. But what about that, Sean, about not only the training, because you're often training by yourselves, because one's in North Bay, one's in Sudbury, I should say Corbeil and Sudbury, but what about that training regime and then getting back in the boat? How does that work? And what about that relationship that you have?
Yeah, I think it's pretty special. It's not uncommon in the racing community for people to pair up with other folks with like-minded interests, and our families have such a shared background. We both grew up in the same kind of YMCA camping, sort of like out tripping, which a lot of viewers and listeners, I'm sure, are very familiar with that kind of northern wilderness out tripping kind of background. So I would say we're comfortable with that, like trippers kind of label, and just thinking through all those systems that a tripper kind of goes through in preparation, and then thinking about that with a racing mentality is it's just a new spin on it, and it seems to be the natural extension, I would say, in your adulthood when it's maybe harder to fit like a large 30-day expedition. Like we're not doing that. We both have jobs and lives and families. So racing kind of becomes the natural extension of out tripping because it's compressed into a format. It's also exciting, and it taps for both of us, I think, like a little bit of the competitive side that I think just makes each day feel really fresh, and it helps us lay down not just a plan for the race, but a plan for life and healthy living, and keeps us kind of feeling pretty good mentally and physically.
Do you guys have a goal? Sorry, do you guys have a goal for this race? Like, do you want to be competitive in it, or is it more just completing it? Like, what's the goal?
I mean, the number one goal is to complete it safely, right? Like that's number one. We would like to be competitive. Yeah. We're up against some really impressive people.
Yeah, there's 11 different countries represented. There's some pretty incredible resumes of our competitors. I think most racers, if you asked them that question, they'd say the first goal is to finish safely. Obviously, risk management when you're on an unsupported trip, just like when you're on an unsupported camping trip, is really high for us. So we're only kind of thinking about the next hour or the next 10 minutes, to take down a race this size. But yeah, I'd be lying if I said, you didn't want to see how your training plays out in a race against other people that have been training just as hard or harder than you. So yeah, we hope to be a part of the Fast Pack.
Yeah. So Lauren was just recently the North Bay to Mattawa canoe race. Tell us about how that went, because again, listeners and viewers, that's 64 kilometers. We're talking 1,000 miles here, but it's all these tune-up things and other tune-up things that you do. But tell us how that race went.
Yeah. I mean, speaking just for myself, I felt really good. When I got out of the boat, you expect it took us just under 8 hours to complete the race. The next day I expected to feel sore. I felt really good the next day. So all of that just really winning our category was awesome, but it feels good to know that all the work you're putting in has brought results.
Now, I have done the math, but 64 kilometers, and again, people should know that there's portages along the way unless you run some of the rapids. But so there's that aspect. So when you do the math and you put that forward, are you on schedule with the 1,000 miles, 10 days, 18 hours? Does it work?
Yeah. The maths. If I back up a little bit, when we put together, we have our training, which we've talked about, a lot of gym, a lot of 80% kind of like your low zone 2 building your aerobic capacity, and then 20% being your intervals and sprints. But on top of that, putting a race calendar together before the 1,000 was really important to us. So our first race was back in April in Ottawa. It's a friendly race that kicks off the marathon season in Ontario. It attracts a lot of paddlers, multi-generational, multi-skill levels. It's just such a wonderful community. It was a fun race, and we did really well in that race. And then we attended Palmer Fest, which is a whitewater festival down in the Madawaska Valley with Paddler Co-op, an organization I know Bill, your daughter's involved in, and Ryan, a good friend of mine, and a wonderful organization. So we were able to participate in Palmer Fest, replicating a lot of things that my son and I did last year in terms of building momentum towards having a successful Mattawa race, which was the next race on the calendar. Probably a different set of goals than some of the other racers in Mattawa, because we, of course, wanted to leave that race feeling really confident, heading to the airplane to head out to Yukon. So wanted to, compete if we could, absolutely, in Mattawa, but more importantly, I think was feeling really confident at the finish line in our systems, that the day went really well, that our bodies and our minds were feeling really strong after the race. And we had a headwind all day and still finished just inside 8 hours. So the math does math, Bill, that we're tracking towards what we hope to be as a sustainable pace on the 1,000.
Well, I'm going to predict that you're going to do it in 9 days and you're going to be in the top 3. So that's what my prediction is going to be. But Lauren, I want to know about the minutia of, day trips are okay, or day races, but the minutia of the gear you have to take. Because I know, having gone to Greenland and hiking, you get the lightest thermarest, the lightest sleeping bag that can be that you can compact together as quickly as you can and stuff it in your bag and get going. But tell us about some of the things you have to think about with regards to food and equipment that you're going to take along, because you are camping and putting your head down and having 40 winks.
Yeah. So number one for me is always food and fuel, right? So how are we going to take in enough calories to be able to sustain our pace throughout the day? And then balancing necessity of taking in calories with actually having things that you want to eat as well. So we've both got, we're doing a lot of liquid nutrition, but then we've got our creature comforts, our comfort foods, and that we need a little pick-me-up. We've got some, in Canadian fashion, we've got some maple fudge that we're going to bring with us. So there's, food, for me, food's the biggest one, but then you have to think about like potential repairs for your boat, repairs for equipment. So we've got our little repair kit. Even thinking about, like you said, like your sleeping mat, you want the smallest one, but then you're thinking like a lot of the smallest ones are completely, you have to fill them up completely with air. They're not foam. So do I want to spend all of that energy at the end of the day blowing up this mattress with 70 breaths or whatever? Or am I going to pack a little bit extra with the foam mattress that will self-inflate? I'm still on the fence. I haven't made the final decision yet about that.
Because I've been thinking about this in my own world. But I want to, full disclosure, Sean, because we've talked beforehand, but I want you to tell to the viewers and listeners about the river itself and what you're going to experience along the way, current-wise and otherwise, and particularly the point, the part we talked about where there are passages, and that's really intriguing because that can make or break how competitive you are as far as finishing.
Yeah, it does really tie to your last question too about gear selection and thinking through each of your systems. Of course, your viewers and listeners will be very familiar on a camping trip, all the different systems, like your gear, your sleeping, your cooking, your food. And when you're on an unsupported trip, we try to build a lot of redundancy into the planning. So, a good example is like, are you going to have like all your solar capacity and batteries and charging like out on the canoe deck all at once? Probably the biggest risk is being in the water unsupported, because on a fast-flowing river like the Yukon, be prepared to be in the water for a mile or two while you fish yourself out as you're moving downstream with the current. And then when you do fish your canoe out eventually, how much gear did you lose? And do you have enough to continue in an unsupported fashion? So we've thought a lot about building redundancy into systems, which is maybe a little bit different than canoe trips when you're with other canoes and you have the benefit of knowing that your friends hopefully will pick you up when you fish, when you lose some gear. So we've tried to think a lot about that, and that feeds right into like how much sleep we're going to get in those 6 hours of pull-offs. Lauren, with her medical training and remote wilderness experience, has put together a pretty robust plan for us to maximize our time on land about being sleep, so that by the time we reach this really tricky navigational section called the Flats, the Alaskan Flats, everybody should look that up and kind of look at the aerials, because to pick your way through the flats where all gone are the mountains and the ability to triangulate, which many of us do when we're reading topo maps, the river spills out into areas that are at some places 10 kilometers wide with very few landmarks. And the mapping, we make our own maps every year, where the race demands that necessitates, one of the rules is you create your own maps, because the maps change year to year based on the melt. The melt changes the water levels and actually changes the configuration of the flats. And the Flats is this about 160 kilometers of heavily braided river. And when you're sleep deprived, navigation in a canoe, when you're following current and trying to read your maps and follow your GPS, and some people are experiencing hallucinations by this point, can be very tricky. And the race can be absolutely, the order of the race can be won or lost in the Flats, because you may end up taking a channel that leads, if your competitors take another channel that could be hours shorter. You can go on a little adventure off a braid before you join the main current again.
Yeah,
So
and I'm glad you used that term braids of these alluvial channels that are formed. I often tell people we'll take the biggest 5-gallon pail and go down to the beach at the edge of the water and pour it and see where the water goes. And that's basically what you have to go through.
North Bay's turning 100, and what a time to be here. From the buzz of the Heritage Parade to sunset concerts at the waterfront, the city is alive with celebration. And you know who's right in the middle of it all? Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. We're proud to be a part of this milestone moment. Whether you're coming home from a family reunion, planning a gathering with friends, or just simply making the most of everything the Centennial has to offer, our doors are open. Stay in a spacious suite that feels like home, with a full kitchen to cook in, room to relax, and a space to unwind after a full day of fun. Are you hosting something bigger? Our event spaces and amazing local partners like the Grand and Stock Transportation make it easy to bring people together. Best of all, they're just steps from the action. The fireworks, the food trucks, the music, the laughter, it's all right here. Celebrate 100 years of North Bay with us. Use code Centennial to save on your stay anytime this year. Be at home with Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. Join the party today at 495 Oak Street West or give us a call at 705-495-3000.
Dear North Bay, as a single mom and full-time student, life can feel overwhelming and budgets are always tight. But one thing I never question is how deeply I care about my community. When I began volunteering at the North Bay Regional Health Centre, I saw firsthand how much the healthcare system means to people, especially when life takes an unexpected turn. It made me think, what if it was my child, my parent, or my friend that was in need of care? That's when I realized I wanted to do more, to be part of something bigger than myself. I joined the I Give monthly club because even a small monthly gift can have a meaningful impact, helping ensure everyone in our community has access to the care they need right here at home. If you believe in strong, local health care, I hope you'll join me. Sign up at nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125. It's simple and it matters. With gratitude, Kim Cosgrove.
I just want to go back to the calories thing for a quick second. How many calories do you guys have to consume? That's got to be, because like you think of
That's
normal.
a Lauren question for sure.
Yeah,
maybe.
We're anticipating expending 10 to 12,000 calories a day
per person.
Wow. So we're using a product called NAAK, N-A-A-K. It's a liquid nutrition that you add. So it gives you 250 calories per 500 mils of water. So we'll be aiming for that 500 mils of water with the NAAK every hour.
Is that like protein, or because you have
there is some protein in it? It's got like it's a formulation for endurance athletes. Like a lot of ultra marathoners will use this product, and we don't see I haven't seen a lot of like marathon canoeists using it, but it's formulated for endurance racing. So
because you have to. There's so many things you have to think about, right? There's electrolytes, your salt levels. I guess it's the same as like an ultra marathoner, right? It's the same kind of idea. So there's a lot of things you have to kind of think about. When it comes to like safety and stuff, because when you were talking, Sean, about like hallucinations and stuff, is that any way scary for you guys? Like when you think about the fact that it's like, this is, as you said, it's unsupported. It's over a week and a half, basically. It's just surviving it and just getting through it safely must be like a huge component, right? Yeah,
it's absolutely part of the calculus of thinking about completing an expedition safely. I know it's a big part of the race organizers' criteria in looking at who gets selected is having a healthy respect for the places that we recreate, and I think part of that is being really humble. The Yukon can make one canoe feel and look very, very small. And I'd be lying to you if I said that wasn't a part of and it should be a part of everybody who's traveling responsibly, thinking about safety. And I grew up in rural Midwestern Ontario, and I remember my dad, and I'm sure several listeners and viewers, always, the cliche, you play with the top half of the tank in terms of the gas tank of your vehicle. And I think a lot about that in canoe tripping is that you're always kind of thinking about the next hour. right? The next 10 minutes, the next hour, the next decision, and the things you do right now are sort of an investment in safely being able to travel in that next hour. And if you apply that to canoe tripping, you think through your systems, all those systems we talked about, whether it's gear or sleep or fuel or weather or water level or fire, increasingly fire these days, which are a natural part of the ecosystem, but are also burning longer and hotter than in the past due to climate change. So when we think through these things, of course, there's a healthy fear or humility and respect for the areas and the people that have lived there, obviously learning a lot, because that's how you travel safely in these areas.
Yeah, because there's two components, right? There's the component of being able to physically be able to do that long of a stretch, because you're basically doing the Mattawa canoe race 10 days in a row. Well, more than that, almost like a canoe race and a half every day for 10 days. Which is absolutely insane. I got it a trout, like I did 10 kilometers, and that was enough for me. But to be able to do it, like how, I know we talked about training, but how do you even get your body into that endurance level? Like there's only so much you can do in a gym, right?
So one of my new favorite podcasts is called 90% Mental. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but it's what it boils down to. Like at a certain point, your body's very powerful, but your mind is even more so. So if your mind continues to tell your body to go, I think that's what it boils down to ultimately. And like Sean said, playing with the top half of the gas tank, one of our major goals is we're not going to get behind. We're not going to let ourselves get behind on electrolytes. All of those things. We'll be very on top of all of that. In 2011, when I did the quest with my sister, we didn't put the thought and preparation. We were in our early 20s, and we did hallucinate. And so, does it scare me? I've been through it, so no. And it's this bizarre thing where you're seeing things that they're not there.
What kind of hallucinate? Like, I'm just curious. Like, is it just like landmarks or? So
for me, I started seeing like people kind of peeking out from the trees, like stuff where I was like, did that just happen? And then they got more ridiculous to the point where I'm like, okay, now I'm hallucinating for sure. Like, so you have this awareness that it's not real, but you're still seeing it in 3D before your eyes.
Is that a lack of sleep, or is that more just energy levels? Or
I suspect it's a combination of electrolyte imbalance and exhaustion. Yeah. There's
a good book called The Third Person, and the third person sometimes appears out of the. Have you read that book?
No, I haven't read that book.
Yeah, that happens particularly when people get into situations like you're in and sometimes mostly peril. And that's where I want to lead you to now. It's not about, I don't want to call them fears, but this nervous anticipation or the chi that you have now, the adrenaline takes over all the time. But tell us about what things you have maybe not thought about or thought, oh, I'm going to forget to bring this, or I know you have countless checklists, but what are some of the fears though? If they are fears, because you're competitive too, and I know you'll finish, you'll do well. I've predicted it. So, but or maybe is it just we got to get up there and get going?
I remember saying as we were paddling through Whitehorse last year, and it's a Le Mans start with the Yukon River Quest. So everybody starts at this parkade, and you run 400 meters to your canoe. You jump in and you go, and there's all this excitement and energy. And obviously, I had a lot of gratitude. Anybody that can imagine paddling a race with their son, and then we did MRX in Muskoka in the fall. He wanted to do it again, which is so fantastic that a young person experienced what's called the pain cave. The mental task that it is to complete long distance endurance events. Which, by the way, lots of people can do. Lauren alluded to this earlier. When you put together the plan, your body gets used to it. It really is. It does become a mental game. And I think just jumping back a little bit, understanding what your mind's going to say to you and coming up with really good answers for it now is definitely a strategy, like when you're on the race. Because then you just, here comes my body and here comes my mind. And then, trialing through those reasons why to keep going, it feels great when you stop. So can you put one more stroke together, before you stop? But getting back to your question, Bill, I think when we started that race and we were coming through Whitehorse, I remember thinking, it's so good to start this race and be underway and just to let the big dogs eat. And when we got to the end of Lake Labarge, which is a pretty significant hurdle on day one, it's this huge lake which generates its own weather conditions and poses significant challenges to racers and their plan right away on day one. You get to the end of Lake Labarge and you find this like little opening where the river starts to flow and you feel the power of the Yukon start to pull you, and it's a relief because you've been on flat water or wind or waves for the last like 7 hours. And I said to my son, I was like, I'm almost sad it's over. And I actually feel a little bit like that now, Bill, about the race being so close. It's never been as close as it is, and I'm almost grieving that it's over, because it has been a pretty impactful. This is maybe my middle age, like Harley Davidson moment, like getting into a significant endurance race like this. But and anyone I've talked to or heard talk about this, it's a pretty common experience with endurance racers to have a little bit of a lull. And what do? None of them have really good plans except organizing the next race afterwards.
Well, again, I really liked your answer about, you want your mind to have the right answers. And that would be a whole podcast to talk about the psyche of the mind. I mean, I'm not going to get off topic, but I'm searching for the right answers now with the devastation at the Canadian Ecology Centre in Saint-Michel Provincial Park. So I'm searching for those right answers and trying to develop the new mantra. But, there will be that letdown after the race. And, of course, you're coming back to the Backroads Bill Podcast to tell us all about it. And what are you going to do about that letdown? Because now it's just full steam ahead, so to speak, and looking forward to getting in that canoe and have you calculated approximately how many strokes will you do?
I have not done that math, but we do have.
I do try to stump people. But.
Yeah, no, we do. We are marathon canoeing, so most marathon canoeists try to get in 60 to 65 beats a minute, there, strokes a minute.
Yeah.
And we are employing like a disciplined strategy of, and this is, I'm not revealing any super trade secrets here, because a lot of canoeists like try to follow like an hourly program with a small break to kind of go through your checklists and work on that top half of the tank. So the math could be done there, but I have not done that
well,
math.
you can report back, because that's just a curious. I'll try to do the math a little later on. But Ben,
there's got to be something that tracks that, though. You got to have like a smart paddle or something that'll track how many strokes you did.
We know you're well tracked and you're all the mapping and digital this and that. Do you have a GoPro? No, that would be.
That's not. It's not in our plan at the moment. No, like I struggle as it is to kind of stay in the moment. One of my main goals is to like keep my chin up and actually like look around and take in what's going on around me. When I did the race with my sister, we ended up going back to the Yukon in 2017 to do the race, not do the race, but do the race route. And we took 8 days to do it, just so that we could we didn't feel like we really fully appreciated like what was going on around us. So we'll have enough on our minds, I think, with the race, with it like being a race. So just, we don't need any more challenges to staying in the moment.
There may be a pack of wolves on the side, or the grizzly bear, or the huge moose with the rack, but there it is. Then you just keep going, because you're not stopping for a picture.
Yeah, some of the racers we admire, I would say, we haven't talked about the racing community, but it's so essential, I think, to all our lives, being a part of the communities that really nurture us as humans. And the racing community is so welcoming. It's really competitive, but it's also, there's a lot of sharing that goes on and a lot of support within the community. Of course, it's multi-generational. You have my 16-year-old son last year participating, all the way up to 60 people in their 60s in Ontario being at the top of their game. Look who's winning the Mattawa race every year. Look at their level of experience. This is a sport you can do for a long time. And that experience really matters. And I think some of the race duos that we really admire and aspire to replicate some of their systems, ironically, none of them are really out there with the GoPros. They're putting, not to say that other people aren't putting in the work, but I think it's just a prioritizing of and what fits in the plan. And I don't think that's something that we've got 6 or 7 other things ahead of that. And so maybe hopefully snap a couple photos of maybe the places where we're crashing out. But it's going to be about, staying really disciplined to the task that we've and I think that's a big part of like safe completion too, is just putting the plan down.
And I did see River's grad photo actually, I think on social media while I'm just racing through my mind. Speaking of the race, Ben, back to you.
Yeah. So what kind of I guess like what kind of canoe are you using, and how does it differ from maybe what you'd use in like a Mattawa canoe race or like some of the smaller, or is it the same canoe? Does it matter? Yeah,
it could be the same. I did see some. The company is called H2O Slingshot, and it's a slingshot. It's an Ontario company. A guy named Jeff. He manufactures these, and he's got a really cool story. He's down in Tavistock, out of his family's like pig farming operation. He's got a sea can there north of the city and some farmland. And I actually visited him last year, and to kind of see he's making really competitive pro stock canoes. He makes a bunch of different shells, and there's a fleet, a racing fleet of rental canoes and kayaks in Whitehorse, and there are slingshots available for rent in Whitehorse.
I guess you wouldn't actually be bringing your canoe
you
up.
Could. Some people do.
Because I'm assuming you guys are flying up there?
Yeah, we're going to fly.
Okay,
some people drive their own shells up there, but we'll be renting an H2O slingshot, so representing that Ontario company up there. Really happy with that, with the performance of that canoe. Lauren is a member of the Sudbury Canoe Club and a committee chair for the canoeing branch of the club, and they actually have some slingshots. So we have been able to practice in that canoe on Lake Ramsey, and it's fast. It travels well, and I think if I was in the market for a canoe, I'd probably, as a tripping canoe, I'd even consider it because it carries a lot of weight. We're going to try to pack light, obviously, but when you sink that boat down, it doesn't feel like a pig to paddle at all. It moves nice and fast. And there were some slingshots in the Mattawa race.
What are you guys looking for in a canoe when you do it? Because obviously you want something light, because I'm assuming there's quite a bit of portaging that you guys are going to have to do. You want something light, but what are the things that you look at for a canoe on this kind of race?
I mean, it's got to be a balance. We have to carry a lot of equipment, but we're in moving water. And we have the huge lake to contend with at the beginning. So something that tracks nicely in a lake, but can also maneuver well in moving water. And the slingshot kind of checks all those boxes. So it's kind of nice. The homework was kind of done for us because that fleet was put together very mindfully by one of the previous race competitors, Ben Lott, that's who we're renting from. So, yeah.
And Ben, you should know, and of course on another podcast, we're talking to people from the Wilderness Canoe Association and that whole canoe culture and what have you. But Ben, you should know also that this is kind of a secretive race among the teams and also in the rules, things you can't do ahead of time. So you can't cheat, so to speak. Or if they catch you cheating, you're kicked out of the race. So tell us a little bit about some of those things that they're wary of from a race organization.
Yeah, I think to preserve the philosophy, as I mentioned earlier, each of these races has something that kind of sets it apart, and often it's the location and where it is, and the landscape shapes the race, I would say. So there's a big one down in Alabama called the Alabama 650, and there's another big one called the Texas Water Safari. And then there's something called the Triple Crown in Osable. Osable is the marathon there in Oscata, Michigan. There are some big races, and they all are unique as endurance events in that the landscape shapes the race. What probably sets the River Quest and especially the 1000 apart, the 1000, its philosophy is around the unsupported piece. So no two-way communication. So we do have satellite beacons kind of, there will be thousands of people tracking our location and watching the race unfold. And we'll know that they're there, but we don't have any contact with anyone. Our Garmin GPS, it's the one without the inReach capacity, so you don't have the ability to text message, so to speak, with outside. You're not allowed to receive any outside support, and we don't want that. Like, we're not looking for that. Part of the reason to participate in the race is to participate with the philosophy of the race. The footnote to this, or the caveat, is that you do leave your sat phone on in the tent at night for safety purposes with the race organizer alone. So you could receive and this does happen, I think, most years, you could receive a text message from the race organizer at nighttime indicating that somebody behind you or ahead of you might be in trouble, and would you please, proceed to, because you are the closest support. As soon as this is often talked about in this race, more people go up Everest every year than go past Dawson City. Because of the declining populations of all the communities along the Yukon, in large part due to the salmon collapse, there are fewer and fewer people in this area. It's a very remote area. Of course, it goes up into the Arctic Circle and back down to the Dalton Highway. Infrastructure, as evidenced by the RiverQuest decision here to truncate their race, is lean. Right, so the people and the place are a reflection of that, and participating in that is going along with this unsupported. The race organizer has said no to Netflix and Amazon because they don't want helicopters flying over parts of the course, to really preserve that idea of participating in something that's bigger than ourselves, I suppose.
Yeah, so come July 10th, people should go online to the Yukon 1000 website and follow Lauren and Sean down the river for about 9 or 10 days. I'm predicting 9.
Can you actually track them on the website?
Yeah, you can track them on the
neat.
website, and probably the social media, the Instagram or the Facebook for Yukon 1000 will have race updates from the organizer, who follows along different parts of the race and provides daily updates and a bit of commentary on what's happening. Our Instagram is Outlaws Paddling, so we've been posting a lot about the training and what's involved there in little snippets. And yeah, we certainly encourage people to, just watch the race, think about what they can do. Obviously, participate in the Mattawa race. It's such a lovely kind of small race that really encapsulates elements of all the larger races. We didn't say that earlier, but Mattawa is so special because that race really brings together elements that the other races entail. So starting, with that race is a great entry point into this community.
So when Lauren and Sean come back into the studio, we're going to find out whether you took the foam or the blow-up thermarest. We're going to find out if you calculate enough calories with the foodstuffs you've taken along, and we look forward to and give you all our best from the Backroads Bill podcast. And Ben, you know what? You've got to finish that North Bay to Mattawa canoe race.
Well, when you said that it was short, I was like, no, it's not. I got 10 kilometers in. That was a long time.
Yeah.
But I imagine in the world of endurance racing, it's pretty short.
Hey, you got 10 kilometers this time, and that's a great benchmark for next time.
It is. I didn't go into it this year, but we'll see. Maybe next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyways, thank you guys both for coming in and taking some time out of your day.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, a big thank you and good luck to Sean and Lauren as they are set to leave in the next week or so. And when they finish, we are planning to get them back into the studio to talk post-race, hopefully early in August. I think they're back right around the second last week in July, right near the end of that. So we're hoping to get them in so that that episode comes out sometime in the first 2 weeks of August. So make sure you hit the follow button on this podcast, subscribe, whatever platform you're on, so you don't miss when Sean and Lauren come back. But it's going to be great just to talk about their experience, again, over 10 days. Really is going to take them probably 8 or 9. But 1,000 miles back to back to back it's going to be insane. And it's going to be so interesting to listen to their experience after they finish the race and, probably win. But we'll have to see. So if you enjoyed this episode, you can find new episodes of the Backroads Bill Podcast every Wednesday morning on your favorite podcast player. The video version is available on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel and over at northbayecho.ca, where you can find this podcast alongside a whole bunch of other local North Bay podcasts for whatever fits your fancy. So that wraps things up here. Join us again next week for yet another Backroads adventure.